I woke up to a sound I hated. It was the low, steady beeping of a machine right next to my ear. My head felt heavy like it was filled with wet sand. I tried to lift my hand, but it felt weak and shaky. I looked up at the ceiling. It was white and tiled, not the smooth blue paint of my bedroom. Then the pain hit me. A sharp ache in my chest and ribs made me gasp. I wasn't dreaming. I was in a hospital. Later, the doctors would tell me I had been in a coma for 4 long months. But in that first moment, I didn't see a doctor. I didn't see my father, Arthur. I didn't see my brother, Caleb. The room was totally empty. I turned my head to the side, hoping to see flowers or a card. There was nothing on the small plastic table except for a single piece of paper. It was folded in half. My hands trembled as I reached for it. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my father's writing. It was jagged and rushed. I opened it, expecting words of comfort or love. Instead, I read 6 words that froze my blood cold. Funding ceased. You are on your own. I stared at the paper. I blinked, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. I read it again. Funding ceased. You are on your own. The nurse came in a few minutes later. She looked at me with sad eyes. She told me that my family had left weeks ago. I didn't scream. I didn't yell. I just lay there, listening to the machine beep, holding that cruel note until my knuckles turned white. I thought my life was over. Thought they had won. But I was wrong. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the very beginning. Time felt strange in that hospital room. The nurse said it was raining outside, a cold Chicago rain, but I couldn't see the window from my bed. All I could see was that note. I read those 6 words until they burned into my brain. Funding ceased. You are on your own. Sounded exactly like my father. He was a man who signed checks for people he didn't care about just to make them go away. But this wasn't a business deal. I was his daughter. I remembered how he used to be, years ago. I had a memory of him teaching me to ride a bike in the park, cheering when I pedaled on my own. That man was gone. The man who wrote this note was a stranger. When the tears finally stopped, the silence in the room felt heavy. It was a crushing, lonely silence. I grew up in a house filled with that kind of silence. After my mother, Catherine, passed away when I was 19, our home changed. My stepmother, Elena, moved in 6 months later. Elena didn't shout. She didn't need to. She used silence like a weapon. If I walked into a room, she would stop talking and just look away like I was invisible. My father started doing it too. Then my brother, Caleb, copied them. I learned to survive by being quiet. I learned to hide. For 12 years, I made myself small so they wouldn't have a reason to be mean to me. I thought if I worked hard enough, they would finally love me again. I thought if I made them rich, they would see me. Lying in that hospital bed with my ribs aching, I realized how foolish I had been. They didn't want me to work hard. They wanted me to disappear. And now they thought they had finally gotten their wish. For the last 12 years, I was the ghost in the machine of our family company. My office wasn't on the top floor with the beautiful views of the lake. It was in the basement. It used to be a supply closet. It had no windows, one light bulb that always flickered, and a desk that was too small. But that is where the real work happened. While Caleb was upstairs in his expensive suits, shaking hands and taking credit, I was downstairs building everything. I wrote the code. I designed the product blueprints. I created the proposals that won us million-dollar contracts. Caleb would come down to my basement office before a big meeting. He would tap on my door, grab the file I had spent all night working on and say, "Thanks, Maya. Good team effort." He never looked me in the eye. He would take my work upstairs, present it to the board of directors, and everyone would clap for him. They called him a genius. They called him the future of the company. No one knew my name was on the bottom of every digital file. No one knew I was the one fixing Caleb's mistakes before they ruined us. I told myself it was okay. I told myself that the work was what mattered. I loved the company because my mother started it. She was the real genius. I felt close to her when I was coding or designing. But lying in the hospital, I realized I wasn't honoring my mother. I was letting them steal her legacy. Elena and Caleb didn't care about the quality of the work. They only cared about the money and the fame. And my father, he just wanted to retire with a golden parachute. They had used me until I broke, and then they threw me away like a broken toaster. The door to my hospital room opened with a soft click. I stiffened, thinking maybe my father had come back to check if I was still alive. But it wasn't him. A man in a gray suit walked in. He looked tired but kind. It was Mr. Sterling. He was my mother's old lawyer. He was the only person from the old days who still sent me a birthday card every year. Behind him walked a younger man I had never seen before. He was tall, dressed sharply, and held a briefcase like it contained nuclear codes. "Maya," Mr. Sterling said softly. He walked to the side of the bed. "I am so relieved you are awake. We were worried we would be too late." "Too late for what?" My voice rasped. "Her to talk." "They already left me, Mr. Sterling. Look." I pointed to the note on the table. Mr. Sterling looked at the note, but he didn't look surprised. He looked angry. "I know, Maya. That note is actually why we are here." He turned to the younger man. "This is Julian. He is a corporate auditor. He has been watching the company's finances for the last few months." Julian stepped forward. He didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with respect. "Ms. Maya, we don't have much time," Julian said. His voice was serious. "Your father is planning a massive change. There is a global tech summit happening in Chicago in exactly 72 hours. He plans to announce that the company is being sold and broken into pieces." "Sold?" I whispered. "But that's Mom's company." "He can't sell it without cause," Mr. Sterling said, pulling a chair closer. "So he created a cause. Yesterday, Arthur filed legal papers declaring you mentally incompetent." The room seemed to spin. "Mentally incompetent," I repeated. "But I was in a coma. I was injured, not crazy." "He used your medical state against you," Julian explained, opening his briefcase. "He claims that the accident caused permanent brain damage. He has paperwork saying you will never be able to make decisions again. This gives him full control over your shares and your voting rights. He wants to erase you completely, Maya. Legally and professionally." I felt a cold shiver go down my spine. It wasn't just about money. They wanted to take away my voice. They wanted to make sure that if I ever woke up, I wouldn't matter. I would just be the sick daughter who couldn't think for herself. "He thinks he has won," Mr. Sterling said, his eyes narrowing. "He thinks you are powerless in this bed. He thinks you won't fight back because you never have before." "But," Julian added, a small smile touching his lips, "Arthur made a giant mistake. He was so arrogant, so desperate to save money, that he triggered something he didn't know existed." I looked between them. "What do you mean?" Mr. Sterling pulled a thick, yellowed envelope out of his jacket pocket. It looked old. "Your mother, Catherine, was a brilliant woman, Maya. She knew people could change. She knew that money could make people greedy. Before she died, she created a hidden trust fund. She called it the safety net protocol. She told me to keep it sealed unless a very specific condition was met. The condition," Julian said, "was abandonment during a medical crisis." Mr. Sterling nodded. He placed the old envelope on my bed. "The clause states that if your father ever refused to pay for your medical care while you were unable to speak for yourself, he would forfeit everything. Not just his money, but his control." I looked at the note again. "Funding ceased." "Exactly," Mr. Sterling said. "Arthur signed a refusal of payment form at the hospital billing office 2 weeks ago. He literally signed a document saying he was no longer responsible for your life. That signature, combined with the note he left you, activated the safety net protocol." My heart started to pound hard against my ribs. "What does that mean for me?" Julian leaned in. It means, Maya, that as of 2 weeks ago, your father, Elena, and Caleb don't own the company anymore. The trust automatically transferred all voting rights, all assets, and the majority ownership to you. They are trespassing in your building. They are spending your money. I tried to sit up straighter. The pain was still there, but suddenly the anger was stronger. They thought they were throwing me out in the trash. Instead, they had handed me the keys to the kingdom. But nobody knows, I said, realizing the problem. The board thinks I'm incompetent. The world thinks Caleb is the genius. That is why we have 72 hours, Julian said. If your father announces the sale at the summit, it will be a legal nightmare to undo. We have to stop him before he speaks. We have to prove you are the true owner and the true genius behind the work. Can you do this, Maya? Mr. Sterling asked. I know you are in pain. I know you are weak. But we need you to fight. I looked at the ceiling, then at the note, and finally at the old envelope my mother had left me. She had been protecting me from the grave for 12 years. She knew this day might come. She believed in me when no one else did. I couldn't let her down. I couldn't let them destroy what she built. I can't walk very well, I said. You don't need to walk yet, Julian said. You just need to think. We need access to your files. We need proof that the work Caleb claims is his is actually yours. I have backups, I said. Hidden servers. Encrypted files. Caleb doesn't know about them. He never cared enough to ask how the systems worked. Perfect, Julian said. He pulled out a laptop and set it on the tray table. Then let's get to work. We are going to build a case that will bury them. If you are rooting for Maya to take back what is hers, please hit that subscribe button right now. You won't want to miss what happens next. Mr. Sterling went to the hallway to make phone calls to loyal board members. Julian and I stayed in the room. I gave him passwords I hadn't spoken in years. As he typed, I saw my life's work scrolling across the screen. Every project, every line of code, every late night I spent in that basement. It was all there. It was proof that I existed. For the next 2 days, the hospital room became our headquarters. We didn't sleep. I drank terrible coffee and ignored the pain in my body. We found emails where Caleb asked me to fix his presentations because he didn't understand the data. We found financial logs showing Elena spending company money on vacations while claiming the company was broke. We found the document Arthur signed declaring me incompetent, dated just 1 day before he tried to sell off the company's biggest division. The picture was clear. They were looting the ship before sinking it. This is over $2 billion in assets, Julian said, shaking his head as he looked at the final numbers. They were going to sell it for half that just to get quick cash. They are robbing you blind. They aren't just robbing me, I said, feeling a cold fury. They are robbing the employees. If they break up the company, thousands of people lose their jobs. We have enough evidence to stop the sale, Mr. Sterling said, coming back into the room on the morning of the 3rd day. But a lawsuit takes months. Arthur will fight it. He will lie. The only way to end this immediately is to do it publicly. The summit, I said. Yes, Mr. Sterling nodded. You need to walk onto that stage. You need to look them in the eye. You need to show the world that you are not incompetent. I looked down at my legs. They felt like jelly. I hadn't walked more than a few steps to the bathroom in 4 months. I don't know if I can stand for that long. You won't be alone, Julian said firmly. We will be right beside you. We left the hospital early in the morning. The city was covered in a thick gray fog. It was freezing, but the cold air felt good on my face. Felt real. I was wearing a suit Mr. Sterling had brought for me. It was a bit loose because I had lost weight, but it made me feel like myself again. Not the girl in the basement, but the woman who owned a $2 billion company. We arrived at the hotel where the summit was being held. It was fancy, with crystal chandeliers and gold trim. There were reporters everywhere. I saw posters with my father's face on them. Innovator of the Year, the poster said. I wanted to laugh. We moved through the side entrance to avoid the cameras for now. We needed to get backstage. But as we turned a corner near the service elevators, a large man in a security uniform stepped in front of us. He blocked our path. My heart stopped. If my father had security watching for us, we were done. The guard looked at me. His name tag said, Officer Higgins. He squinted, then his eyes went wide. Ms. Maya, he asked. I nodded slowly, preparing for him to kick us out. Instead, Officer Higgins smiled. I haven't seen you in months. The basement lights have been off. It didn't feel right. You know who I am? I asked, surprised. I work the night shift, ma'am, Higgins said. For 12 years, I've seen you come in early and leave late. I've seen your brother come in at noon and leave by 2. I know who does the work in this building. Officer Higgins reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small, battered logbook. I keep logs of everyone who enters the server room, he said. It's protocol. Your brother claims he built the new interface last November, right? That's what the news said. Yes, I said. Well, Higgins flipped through the book. In November, your brother was only in the building for a total of 8 hours. You were in the server room for 120 hours. It's all right here. Timestamps and signatures. I felt tears prick my eyes. I thought I was invisible. I thought no one saw me. But this man, this security guard who I barely spoke to, he saw everything. This is the final piece, Julian said, taking the logbook gently. This proves physical presence. It proves he is a liar. Why are you helping me? Asked Higgins. Because my daughter works in accounting, he said. If your father sells the company, she loses her health insurance. You were the only one who ever said, "Good morning" to me, Ms. Maya. Go get them. He swiped his badge and opened the secure doors for us. Good luck. We walked toward the main ballroom. I could hear the murmur of hundreds of people. My stomach twisted in knots. I was terrified. But then I touched the pocket of my jacket where I had put the note. Funding ceased. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it for justice. We waited behind the heavy velvet curtains of the main stage. The lights were blindingly bright out there. I could hear my father's voice booming over the speakers. We are entering a new era, Arthur was saying. A time of change. My family has built this legacy, and now we are ready to take the next bold step. I peeked through the curtain. Arthur looked confident. Elena was sitting in the front row, wearing a fur coat, looking bored. Caleb was standing next to the podium, smirking at the crowd. They looked so comfortable. They looked untouchable. He is about to announce the restructuring, Mr. Sterling whispered. We have to go now. Julian nodded at the technician he had bribed to control the screen. Ready when you are, Maya. I took a deep breath. My ribs ached, my legs shook, but my mind was clear. I thought of my mother. I thought of the basement. I stepped out from behind the curtain. First, no one noticed. Then, a few people in the front row pointed. The murmuring started. Grew louder. My father turned around to see what was distracting his audience. When he saw me, his face went white. It was the color of old paper. Caleb dropped the remote clicker he was holding. Elena stood up, her hand over her mouth. Maya! My father stammered into the microphone. The whole room heard his fear. What are you doing here? You're sick. You should be in the hospital. I walked right up to the second microphone. I was in the hospital, Father, I said. My voice was steady. It echoed through the huge hall. Until you stopped paying the bill. The crowd gasped. It was a loud, collective intake of breath. Cameras flashed like lightning. This is a private family matter. Arthur shouted, trying to block me from the podium. She is not well. She is mentally unstable. If you hate bullies like this, please hit the like button on this video. Let's show Maya some support. I am perfectly stable, I said, locking eyes with him. And this is not a family matter. This is a company matter. Because as of 2 weeks ago, this is my company. Security! Caleb yelled, his voice cracking. Get her off the stage. Officer Higgins stepped out from the side, but he didn't come for me. He stood with his arms crossed, staring at Caleb. He wasn't moving. "You filed papers claiming I was incompetent," I said to the crowd. "You tried to erase me. But you forgot one thing. Mom's trust." I nodded to Julian. The giant screen behind us changed. It wasn't my father's slideshow anymore. It was a high-definition image of the trust document. The words "abandonment clause" were highlighted in bright red. "When you signed the refusal to pay for my life support," I said, holding up the crumpled note for everyone to see, "you triggered a transfer of ownership. You abandoned me to save money, and it cost you everything." Elena was shouting something from the front row, but no one was listening to her. The board members were standing up, looking at the screen. "This is a lie," Arthur screamed. "I never abandoned her." "The note," I said, reading it into the microphone. "Funding ceased. You are on your own. That is your handwriting, Dad. And we have the hospital records." Julian clicked the button again. The screen changed to show the logbook pages Officer Higgins had given us. "And for years," I continued, turning to Caleb, "you told everyone you were the genius behind our technology. You took the awards. You took the bonuses." I pointed to the screen. "This is the security log. It shows I was in the building working 80-hour weeks while you were on vacation. The metadata on the servers matches these logs. I built this company. You just wore the suit." Caleb shrank back. He looked small now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by pure panic. The crowd wasn't murmuring anymore. They were silent, watching the fall of a dynasty. "You can't do this," my father whispered, the microphone picking up his weak voice. "We are family." "No," I said softly. "Family doesn't leave you to die in an empty room. Family doesn't steal your life's work." Mr. Sterling stepped forward with a microphone. "I am the executor of the Catherine Trust," he announced. "The documents displayed are authentic. Under the bylaws of this corporation, Arthur, Elena, and Caleb are immediately removed from all leadership positions for gross misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty." The room erupted. Journalists were shouting questions. Board members were yelling for order. But I just stood there, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. Security guards, the ones who worked for Higgins, came onto the stage. They didn't grab me. They gently escorted my father and Caleb away from the podium. My father looked back at me one last time. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked defeated. He looked like a man who realized he had thrown away a diamond because he thought it was just glass. Elena tried to storm onto the stage, but Higgins stepped in her way. "Access denied, ma'am," he said. I watched them go. I didn't feel happy exactly. It is hard to be happy when you lose your family. But I felt clean, felt safe. The silence in my head wasn't the scary kind anymore. It was the peaceful kind. The kind that comes after a terrible storm finally stops. 3 weeks later I went back to the hospital. I walked into that empty white room where I had woken up. It looked different now. The sun was shining through the window, melting the Chicago ice. I had been named CEO the day after the summit. We didn't sell the company. Instead, we expanded. I moved my office out of the basement to the top floor, but I kept the door open. I made sure everyone knew that in my company, the people who did the real work would always be seen. I gave Officer Higgins a raise and a promotion. I stood by the hospital bed and took the crumpled note out of my pocket. Funding ceased. You are on your own. I tore it in half. Then I tore it again. I dropped the pieces into the trash can. I'm not on my own, I whispered to the empty room. I have Mom. I have the truth. And I have myself. I learned that you can't force people to love you. You can't work hard enough to make bad people good. But you can stand up. You can speak the truth. And sometimes, when you think you have lost everything, you find out that you really just got rid of the things that were holding you down. My name is Maya, and I am done being a ghost. I am the one running the machine now. If you enjoyed this story of justice, please share it with a friend who needs some inspiration. And don't forget to comment, Team Maya, below so I know you made it to the end.